Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm Catriona Morten, I'm a sensory-motor psychotherapist, and today I'd like to talk to you about our nervous system. Our nervous system is all the nerve endings and the sensors that run through our entire body, head to foot. It's comprised of different components. We have our vagus nerve, which is actually two hemispheres of nerves, which is the longest nerve that runs through our body. But for today, I'm just going to refer to all of it as our nervous system. First of all, let's just do a little kind of explanation of the mechanics of it. So the way that we normally take in information, right now I'm taking in information, I'm hearing things, I'm seeing things, I'm sensing things, I'm smelling things, and that information is going through and being processed into my brain through the prefrontal cortex, and it's how we process and make sense of the world around us. And we all do it the same way, more or less. What happens if there was going to be a really loud bang outside? Then my alarm system would go off, and that's my amygdala. And my amygdala would immediately be on red alert until I get confirmation of, oh, it was a firework. Everything goes back off alert and we settle down very quickly. If, however, the amygdala goes off and it is a real alarm, a real present danger threat, then we go into a completely different way of processing that information. We bypass, I wonder what that could be, and we go straight into survival. So our amazingly clever brain will bypass the prefrontal cortex, bypass the hippocampus, go straight down into your thalamus, straight down into your reptilian brain, and go into fight, flight or freeze. And it alerts very quickly. It's a nanosecond. The nanosecond that happens, it sends a message to our body and our nervous system, and it is on full alert, which means that we then get pumped with adrenaline, cortisol, a multitude of different hormones and chemicals that mean that if we're going to have pain, we're going to be anaesthetised to it. If we need to run, our muscles are ready. And if we need to freeze, which actually takes a huge amount of energy, we've got the capacity to do all of those things. That's our survival mechanism. That would register, if there was something really, really scary, that would register as an overwhelming traumatic experience, and it would get lodged in the amygdala. It doesn't mean that we have PTSD. It means that there's something in there that can potentially be poked. Most of us have things in our amygdala, past traumatic experiences, that have either processed themselves at the time, or it's lodged in such a way that it's not going to come loose, it's not going to show up, and we're not going to get triggered unless something very, very significant or dramatic happens that might set it off, or it might not. When we have multiple or a very dramatic traumatic experience, then things associated with that experience are going to trigger it. It could be a smell, a sound, a movement, and the same process is going to happen. So we might not be aware of anything alarming at all, but something can trigger a memory in there, a traumatic memory that sets off that process of shutting down a prefrontal cortex, which means we can't think. It might even be really difficult to speak or communicate. We can't make any sense of anything because we've gone into our reptilian instinctive fight, flight or freeze, and the nervous system's gone off with it. So if we get triggered from a past trauma, a past traumatic memory, then we might not have any clue as to why we feel a certain way, but we'll be flooded with cortisol, we'll be flooded with adrenaline, we might feel extreme levels of panic, fear, and be very, very unaware of what's going on around us or the people around us. We're just into survival mode. when we work with trauma, we have to work with the body because this is where the nervous system sits. And if our nervous system is continually going off, then yes, we are going to have higher levels of cortisol, lower levels of serotonin. We're going to have a different chemical makeup in our body. That's not the cause of the depression, the anxiety or the trauma. It's the result of it, because our nervous system is producing too much of this stuff. If we're living at a high level of alert all the time, then our body has to be ready for action and it has to be pretty pumped, and that will alter things like your digestive system, that will suffer, your sleep, that will suffer, your ability to regulate your body temperature, that will be difficult. You'll just be out of whack in a lot of different ways. And those things, when it's chronic, they can have a very detrimental impact on the physical nature of our body. We can develop physical symptoms, physical illnesses and diseases as a result of that, particularly in our gut, but it can be anywhere in our body. Some people suffer from high levels of pain all the time. That can also be as a result. So we've got to be able to work with the body if we're going to work with the nervous system. And we've got to be able to understand the particular way that our body responds and reacts. Not everybody will have the same. It depends on what our first initial trauma was, or the first time we got overwhelmed. Whether we have a fight, flight or freeze response will determine what one is our go-to thing. Because we haven't got time to think about it, we'll just click into the one that we did the very first time, and that will become the mode of operation. So what's actually happening is we are engaging our sympathetic nervous system, and that's the one that takes us up, up, up. Higher levels of adrenaline, high levels of cortisol, and it fires up. Hello little puss, little friendly cat. Fires up our sympathetic nervous system. When we're in a relaxed state, what we're trying to do is get into our parasympathetic. That's when everything starts to settle and we can relax. We can't relax in the sympathetic. So what we need to be able to do is find ways of getting this highly activated body that's whooshing up in our sympathetic to be able to regulate and calm so we can kick in the parasympathetic. When people use things like drugs, alcohol, self-harm, a lot of the time what they're actually doing is they're short-circuiting their sympathetic nervous system to knock it into the parasympathetic. If you ask someone who cuts what happens immediately after you've cut, they'll tell you that they start to calm down. It's a way of shifting their state, but it will drop quite rapidly. So what we want to be able to do is recognise when our nervous system's going off, when we're whooshing up in our sympathetic, and find ways of bringing it down, which brings down our levels of activation, anxiety, fear, panic, and takes our body off high alert so we can actually come down, breathe more deeper, get our frontal lobes back on so we can think, take on actually what's happening around us and be more present. When we're offline, when we're shooting up here, then we're not present. We're not in the present moment, we're in action stations, panic mode. We need to bring ourselves much more back to the present so that we can think and function and make sense of things. So while we all have a brain and a nervous system that works in the same way, it will affect our body in different ways. For some people, it will be a constriction in the breath. They feel that they can't breathe. For some people, it will be in the throat, in the neck. For some people, it will be their diaphragm just seizes up and they actually can't get any breath in there. For other people, it will feel like a constriction from the outside. We're all affected in slightly different ways. So we have to be able to, during a therapy session, not shoot our nervous system up and out of the stratosphere, but be able to slow it down so we can watch and feel what is happening in the body. The therapist can notice from their viewpoint, and the client can notice from the inside out. Each of these things need a slightly different resource in order to get regulated, to be bringing ourselves back down into the parasympathetic. If it's a tightness in the chest, it might need external pressure on it to match it, so that when we release it, it can naturally release. It might need calming and contact and connection. It might be going to a completely different part of the body if that's gone a bit frozen, so that we can get movement in a different part of the body that can then release the frozen or constricted places within us. Once we can understand these things, we can get a bit of control over it. We can manage our nervous system. We can retrain ourselves instead of going up into the stratosphere, to actually recognise what's happening, know what's needed, feel it, see what's happening, see what's helping, and get ourselves back into the present moment. That way we've got control, we're not at the mercy of things going on around us and us being afraid of not being able to cope, and we're not at the mercy of our past experiences and our trauma. We can get this under control, we can understand about the nervous system and where we need to be going, feel ourselves coming down, and then give ourselves a bit of congratulations that actually, wow, I've just managed to control my nervous system and my body and the activation that goes with it. Your therapist, or just by yourself noticing, can find lots of different how-tos. For some people, getting your feet grounded onto the floor, pushing into the floor, that can be helpful. For some people, it's orienting around the room. When you're orienting around the room, what you're doing is you're trying to get yourself back into the present moment. Using your curiosity is a really good way of doing that. Can you see that flower outside the window? What colour is it? What shape is it? Be curious about it. Look at it really carefully. Get yourself more engaged and present. Using our senses. Senses are brilliant because it's a present moment experience. If you smell something, you know it's happening in the here and now. If you're touching things around you and you can be curious and you can feel it, that's a present moment experience. If you're feeling something solid, pushing into something solid, you can feel your muscles working and you can feel it, that's a solid thing that's happening right now. You can push on it, it's not going to give. We feel very, very destabilised when we've got a foot in the past, which is when we've been triggered. So the more we can bring the present into sharp focus and reality, the more we're going to feel regulated, grounded here. And those are the things that can help us just be able to breathe and get our parasympathetic nervous system kicked into place so we can come down and relax. I hope that's been helpful, and I hope that's helped you understand a bit more about your brain and your nervous system. So if you've enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel below, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye!